Hi, this is Discover the Ordinary. My name is Daniel Husar, and you're probably wondering what are we doing here and why should we discover the ordinary? For me, this means kind of the status quo, like the same procedures that we do at work forever, without questioning them, maybe, or the things that we take for granted in our private life and the outside world. And I'm kind of here to analyze our patterns and try to think out of the box, to kind of break the status quo and get some new ideas into that. Because my feeling is if we don't do that once in a while, for example, in our business lives, we will maybe lose the spark that was ignited when we started working on an exciting new project or when we founded that company that we were so passionate about. And we kind of get stuck in a loop of doing the same things over and over and over again without questioning the status quo. And I'm going to give you two examples, one out of my private life and one in my business life that you can apply straight away. Because the first example will be about games and the second one will be about how to think about AI in your business. And let's get straight into the example number one, which is a game, a trading card game called Magic the Gathering. It is a fantasy setting. I started playing as a teenager, still play occasionally, but not that much. And I was a tournament level player at that game. But how did this came to be? The game was invented in 1993. I started playing around 95, 96. And it is a strategy card game, so to speak, where you can develop a strategy before the game even starts. You build a deck of 60 cards and you play against other players and try to reduce their life total to zero. This is kind of how you win. And you have creatures and armies battling against each other and use powerful spells. You're basically they're two dueling wizards or more in multiplayer games. This is kind of the setting. And my friends and myself were just getting into the game, and we kind of played variations of the same strategy over and over and over again. I mean, it looked slightly different, but at its core, it was very similar or the same. And I didn't realize it at that time. And this was also kind of the status quo. We didn't question it much. A lot was depending on maybe who had the better cards or the luck of the draw and things like that. So that was a bit of a frustrating experience for me because I wanted to win and I was very competitive at that game. I still am in my life and with games as well. So in 1997, I had a vacation that I spent at my grandma's, and I was just sitting on the bed, and had all those magazines and card lists in front of me because back then the internet was not as prevalent as it is today, where we can look up any of these cards and just, or look at strategies, tournament winning strategies, just in a second, and maybe even get a guide for it on how to play this. No, I had to look at every single card, which was about 2,500 cards back then. Now we have tens of thousands of cards. I don't even know how many, to be honest. And then I looked at the way that my friends and I were playing, and I figured out something by kind of analyzing the ordinary and the status quo in this regard, that we were all playing a strategy that relied on big creatures fighting each other. And then I saw the resources and the cost associated with these creatures, which was much higher than the cost of the spells to get rid of them, for example, or spells in general. So creatures were highly inefficient and spells were highly efficient. So I built a deck of 60 cards, a strategy, to beat only this strategy and all the variations of it, and get rid of the creatures, stay in the game, and just not lose. and trade favorably. And this strategy, it became so good that my friends didn't want to play against me anymore. It took a long time. It was kind of torturous because all you were doing is controlling the game and then eventually winning somehow, with some small creature or some insignificant thing that you were playing. But in the end, it led to more creative play, and we kind of the ban was kind of lifted, and we had many more creative strategies and creative decks because of this, and this led me to tournament play, and the insight that gave me is that this kind of thing to question to look at the pattern that we are all developing, and nobody is safe from that, and that it's really worth looking into that, because you can get an advantage that is not only 10, 20, 30% of efficiency. Sometimes you can be twice as efficient, maybe 1,000% more efficient. It can be, and I realize, a game is a very confined environment, and it's not as complex as the real world, but you can get a huge advantage. And I believe this to be true, for example, in the business world as well, although it is much more complex than a game, I will admit. And just to close this argument, maybe this is called a metagame analysis. Now, when you look at a tournament, you will see tons of strategies and tons of archetypes of strategies. And you can compare them, and they're much more analyzed than they were back then. The aggressive strategies, the controlling strategies, and things like that. And this is called a metagame. So an expected amount or type of strategies at a tournament, and you kind of prepare for that, and you see that your strategy beats most of the field that you expect to be there. And this could be, in a business world, this could be translated as market trends that you're watching and trying to find your place and your positioning in the market, for example. And that's what I kind of did. I found in this small circle of friends, I found this loophole or positioning, and it was the correct positioning for a time, definitely. And this closes the first example, and coming to my second example, this is an AI strategy, or a way to look at the metagame of AI in our current landscape. And the way that I look at it, I'm now close to Frankfurt in Germany. And in Germany, the discussion, or kind of the metagame of the discussion, is based a lot around regulation, because understandably people are nervous about this. What about privacy concerns? This is also a very European thing. We have strong regulations for privacy in Europe, and it's especially a topic in Germany. There's a lot of fear associated with AI and implementing AI projects, and also the technical hurdles. And it's seen as I went to a couple of conferences, and I discussed with a couple of corporates. I discussed with SMEs, for varying sizes, and it's more or less these two topics. And what I was kind of missing in this is the incremental projects and the incremental changes we can make to make this AI project happen. And will show you now a way to think about this, maybe a little bit out of the box, or to kind of find a way in for you or your company, even in your private life, to engage with AI. And what do I mean by that? In the current landscape, obviously we had large language models like ChatGPT, which is a game changer. We we use it in a very unstructured way. I think, the children use it in school. Your employees or your colleagues are probably using it at work, and it's in an unstructured way. And sometimes you can kind of spot, oh, this image was AI, obviously AI generated, or this text was obviously written by an AI. Maybe it has a lot of adjectives. Maybe it was very corporate in nature. And this is always a sign of these large language model characteristics. If you give them a generic prompt, you will get a generic output. And this is all fine, but it would be better to do it in a structured way, in my opinion, and to kind of tackle this and have rules and regulations and use cases ready, so we use it in the most safe and efficient way. And and I think if we look at this meta game in a way, that we have one thing that we're not thinking about, which is development cycles. And it's all seen as, this is so big, we cannot do this. The biggest companies in the world, maybe they can do this, but we can't. Or I, as an individual, I can't do this because it's just too much. It's too complicated, too technical, and what about my privacy and these kind of things. And I want to encourage you to think about this in a different way, and look at this in terms of development, a thing called development cycles, which I would explain as how much impact, or the perspective, how much impact can an individual make at a certain cycle of technology. And I believe we are at a point that an individual can make a really big impact with technology. Let's look at game development with floppy disks, right? They were quite small. A single developer, a single person could write a game in their basement, and it could sell for thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then we had games that had video on CD and much better soundtracks, and suddenly we needed bigger teams to make competitive games, to stay competitive in the market. So the cycle went from small to big. And a similar thing happened to website development. When you look at modem speed, if you remember, like I do, using this was very slow, and websites needed to be small. Then we had DSL speeds, ISDN speeds, and then websites could be bigger. So if something is small, if a development cycle it favors the small, if something is very new, then I believe an individual and small projects can make a big impact. And I believe that this is the case here as well in the development cycle and the cycle of AI that we are right now. It is absolutely true that these large language models are owned by some of the biggest corporations in the world. Google, Amazon, OpenAI, which, they have a big investment by Microsoft. For example, Apple will have their proprietary models. And, Meta, as an exception, they have the open source Llama models, for example. That is all true. I'm not saying that you should invent your own large language model on top of these. What I'm saying, you can learn how to better communicate with these, how to prompt them better to get less generic outputs. And on top of that, you can make a thing that is called, for example, OpenAI offers a development tool without coding, which is a custom GPT, which means that you prompt an individual GPT to make a special project happen, or to prompt it in a specific way to be good at one task or one area. For example, you could prompt it to be your marketing assistant and to come up with campaigns and to come up with texts for the campaigns. And then you could add some data from your company, for example, the way that you write, or the way the corporate identity was formed, your positioning in the market. And you would get much better and much more specific results as if you would just type a small prompt into ChatGPT and expect an answer. And this is especially true for extremely repetitive tasks or brainstorming for LinkedIn posts, something that you'd have to do over and over and over. And this helps you build better templates. And I believe that in my experience, this saved me a lot of time. 1/3, sometimes if I did really well, half of my work was already done. And I believe that a single person can make a huge impact with this. And what about you? Have you ever worked with a GPT like that, or maybe you even experimented further with local models on your machine? Just let me know in the comments what your experiences are, what your interests are, and we can maybe get there in future episodes, for example. And this is the end of the second example, so I hope you liked it. If you did, there will be a button here to subscribe. And please leave a comment, ask me anything you want, get in touch. I'd be happy to chat. I'm really passionate about the topic. And yeah, and what will we do in this podcast is not only AI, but it's a strong focus. It's a strong focus of mine. I have a background in marketing and sales and technology, as you probably guessed by the example. So these are the things that we will talk about in this podcast, and I will use examples of psychology and also pop culture, things like that, to have good examples, good metaphors, and stories to tell about these things. And don't worry, it's not only going to be me who is talking to you. I'll have really good guests, experts in the field of sales, marketing, technology in the future. So that we get a really good mix of up-to-date topics. And in the next episodes, I will present to you more examples how you can use AI more efficiently in your daily processes, and and think about things differently, and discover things that maybe look ordinary to all of us, but maybe they make a difference in your life. Thank you so much for your time and listening to me, and I hope you found it useful, and hopefully see you next time.